My final episode for this quarter's Janus Oasis is actually Darroch Crewe. And he used to actually work with me at a former company. He used to be a director in training initially when I first knew you, and then he moved over to HR. And now he's running his own company, which is called Crewe Creative, and he's specializing in change management. Did I miss anything there, Darroch?
No, that's great. And it's great to be here to chat with you today.
Thank you. So why I wanted to bring Darroch on, honestly, he's a great guy. He's really thrilling, really kind. He's always been helpful and thoughtful, but I'm interested in how he's actually pivoted his career and gone into the change management. And also Darroch was actually the first person who really made me realize that spending 25 years in operations actually had value from a consulting kind of view. And I had talked to him when I started getting bored at sales. And so he sort of opened my mind to the consulting possibilities of the knowledge that I already had. So that's part of why I wanted to bring Darroch on. The other part is he's a man after my own heart in terms of visibility. So if you know me, I started writing in 2017 on LinkedIn. And then I applied that to change management processes internally and started building community to grow employee voice and really engage employees. Now, Darroch did that really for himself, but he did it in a way that was completely different than I've done. So, Darroch, can you tell us a little bit about the choices that you made to move from Toronto back to Newfoundland, where you currently live now, and how you actually did that in the projects that you got involved to facilitate and help your friends and the impact that that's had?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to rewind the clock even a little bit further from moving back to Newfoundland. I actually moved to Toronto from Newfoundland back in the year 2000. So I just wrapped up, I want to say, most of my university education. I had a couple of courses outstanding, but I just, at the time, the job market in Newfoundland, it was starting to show promise, but it didn't really, I didn't really see a role or place. So that's why I moved to Toronto. Fast forward, I want to say, to 2017. And 2017, I turned 40, and 40 is always kind of that big turning point for a lot of people. And I actually opted to take a leave of absence from work. And the initial plan was take 6 months off to travel, see a bit of the world, and then see where life landed me. And so in June of 2017, I took some time off. I actually came home to Newfoundland for a bit with my family. I had a chance to travel overseas, visited Croatia, went to Dubai. So really got a chance to see the world. But then at the end of the year, I was looking for what's next. And that's when, in the spring of 2018, I started my business, which was focused on change management. And so a lot of my career had been focused around change management, consulting, training, development, learning. So this was a chance to take some of the stuff I really loved doing and then start offering it as my own business. Obviously, fast forward then to 2020 with the wonderful pandemic that we all experienced. And I was, like most people, forced to work from home and in my own business and working for myself, but I was doing it from home. I lived in a 600 square foot condo in downtown Toronto, didn't have a balcony, didn't have any outdoor space, got out for a walk every day, but it still felt sheltered. And it was then, I would say, probably in mid to late 2020, where I started thinking about moving home. And then it was actually my birthday in 2021, where I set the deadline to make a decision. I was like, am I going to move home? Am I not going to move home? And that was the day I made the decision. Yeah, I'm going to sell my condo and relocate back to Newfoundland, because this is where my family is. I still have friends here from university, but it was really a chance to, I want to say start over, but not really, because I got to start over in a new location, but I still got to do all the things that I like to do from a business point of view, which were like the change management consulting work, learning and development work, and so forth. So fast forward then to July of 2021 when I made the leap. And it was about a month after I moved home that I actually bought the home that I'm living in now. And my real estate agent shared the post of me buying this house that I'm living in now, which is in Torbay, Newfoundland, overlooking kind of the ocean, which is wonderful.
Right under Orion's belt. That made me laugh.
Exactly.
Because I used to be on Team Orion when we
Yeah.
worked together.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he posts this picture of my house is right under Orion's belt. And I'm like, yeah, Orion's belt like haunts me every day in front of my driveway.
So somebody from, I guess, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador saw that I had bought this house, but it was also me moving back from Toronto to Newfoundland, had my business that I was moving with me and going to be working remotely. And I had an opportunity to speak with Minister of Immigration, Skills and Job Growth. I may not have gotten that title exactly right, Gary Byrne. But he came out and we chatted a little bit about the experience of moving home, why I moved home. And again, it was partly to be closer to family, partly because I could work from anywhere because of the type of work I'm doing. But I think it's a story we'll continue to see other people experience, whether it's for Newfoundland and Labrador or other provinces, smaller provinces, of people choosing to move home because they can and can continue to do the work that they do. So it was a great opportunity to share my story in terms of that video. That's the visibility video you're talking about.
Yeah.
But also to help share my story and experience so that if other people are looking to do that, they know that they're not the first to do it. It's now 9 months after moving home. I have no regrets. I am so excited to be here. But because of technology, I get to keep in touch with people like you and other folks from Toronto that I've developed relationships with over the years, so which is great.
Yeah, and there are a couple of points that I just want to pull out from that story. So Darroch and I obviously know each other very well. So we talked before about the fact that there's an opportunity to really customize the work experience that you have and personalize the type of work that you do. And so Darroch is really very much a people-oriented person. Like you can tell from the work that he's talking about, the training and the helping and the consulting and just it's all people-oriented. But one of his really big values and one of his strengths really is connectedness. And that's why working in the condo without any outdoor space and without any access became challenging for you. So
Really.
he proactively addressed ways to personalize his work experience, even though he's working from home, to get more of what helps him thrive in work. And that's being closer to the people that, are really, truly important to him.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think, and I know I'm not alone in this through the COVID-19 pandemic, though, was in some days feeling that sense of isolation and feeling isolated, but in a very confined space. I wouldn't say I felt trapped, but there were moments where I'm like, I want to get out of this space for now. And so with Newfoundland, I have a little bit more land here than I would have had in Toronto. I actually have a backyard. I'm able to get outside, weather permitting, obviously, Newfoundland's weather. We had snow this morning. So
yeah. Are you still getting icebergs floating by in like the bay?
I haven't seen an iceberg yet, but there's been advertisements now in the last few days of they expect maybe this to be a very robust iceberg season. So fingers crossed I get to see some from this view for sure.
So I gotta make a Newfoundland joke at this point, and forgive me so is it iceberg season then and then when?
I think they come together. I usually June, July, August. That's when you see a lot of the tours going out for icebergs and or whales or both. So I think it's they all happen. I should know better. I should know this, right? I should be able to speak intelligently to this, but maybe that's my next learning assignment.
So this is where the government featuring you as the person to pivot the work. It really has some like work to do with you to make sure that you're on top of that tourism aspect of it. So
absolutely.
But I find it interesting because you brought your work with you because you're self-employed, but I know people who did this too. So like I know a lot of people who've been moving home from like Toronto, from Waterloo, back to Nova Scotia, even staying within the same company. And then it becomes interesting as you return to office, because now all of a sudden these people are being pulled into an office, but they don't have relationships with those offices because their business is actually based back in Ontario. And so it's fascinating to see how companies are going to adapt and how people are going to adapt to that change. So you're fortunate because you work for yourself and you choose your customers and it's a different experience. But I think that a lot of employees also relate to this as well too, because people were being offered flexibility that probably they're not necessarily being offered right now as we go back to office. And it depends on the company, obviously.
And as I'm building kind of my client base here, a lot of my clients are still based in Ontario and
Yeah.
other provinces. But as I build my client base here, one of the questions I've been asked from some of the people I've chatted with are, will you come in on site? Will you from time to time be able to be on site with us? And that's really exciting for me as well. As much as I do enjoy the flexibility of working from home, I do also like people and I like being with people. So the opportunity, even if it's a few hours a week, to be able to go on site and be with clients and have that energy of being with people is really important for me. So I like
Yeah.
the kind of that flexibility, that hybrid, we're calling it hybrid. So the hybrid working environment.
Well, and there's all kinds of different names. And so hybrid is like the catch-all, but like I call that approach where, because just because you're working from home doesn't mean you never see people.
That's
So
right.
I call it more virtual first. Your default is I'll work from home or I'll work from a location that's not actually an office, but I can choose to go in if and when I want to, and it supports the work and what I want to achieve.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, what the epitome of autonomy and flexibility is in the hybrid world. So that's
No, I
really
agree.
cool. Now, I want to loop this back to Newfoundland again before we leave that completely. Now, Newfoundland is obviously with this visibility program and talking about bringing people back so that they're moving back, they're joining their families. Obviously, it's stimulating the economy. But there's something else that Newfoundland is actually trying to do, and it's what is it called? It's called Come Home.
Come home here. Yeah. So that's not a new tradition. It's something that a lot of smaller communities have done over the years. I grew up in Port Basque on the West Coast, and typically they've been doing a come home year every 5 years. I used to be every 10 years, but now it's I think every 5 years.
It's
Um,
accelerated.
yeah, but Newfoundland itself, the last time Newfoundland did a province-wide come home year was in the 60s. And so it really is an opportunity to invite and welcome back people who have left the province either for employment, for family reasons, for other reasons, to come home and visit. So it's an opportunity to promote tourism. It's an opportunity to promote people reconnecting with family. But I think as an extension of what we've already talked about, it's also an opportunity to invite people to say, hey, how are you doing in that place that you're coming from? Would you potentially be interested in moving back home as well? So maybe planting the seed with people who may have that flexibility to leave some of the larger centers and come home. And I'm really excited for that. I'm curious to see what type of inward migration come home year potentially starts to foster with people and hopefully inspire some people to move home. I think it's
Yeah.
important for the province from a growth point of view.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool because I think that like local politicians aren't necessarily even thinking big enough because there's the whole push to bring people back to the office, but it's just like people are actually looking and they've had 2 years really to reflect on what fuels them, what's important to them, what they really want their life to look like going forward. And the question is not just do I stay here, do I go back to the office, do I work from home, do I work from the office, but it's like where do I live? Who do I want around me? And is the future even where I'm living currently right now? And by extension of that, is the work that I'm doing portable or do I leave it all together, create my own, get a new job in a completely different location? And that's where
Yeah.
the work from wherever becomes an aspect, unless you're writing that whale ferry or
Yeah.
whatever it is. I'm sorry.
And I remember, I think it was about 15 years ago, Tim Ferriss released the 4 Hour Work Week, which was really talked about that work from wherever. And I think a lot of people who heard the original ideas from that book thought it was a bit of a pipe dream that no, we'll maybe never get there or we won't be flexible enough to do it. And I think we're now seeing, no, it's here. It's maybe not the 4 hour part, but definitely the work from wherever and the flexibility to work from wherever is certainly here. And I know that creates challenges for companies and taxation and all of that stuff, but these are modern day problems that we're going to have to solve. So it's an exciting problem to have, I think.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And actually, one of the things that's come up recently is because I'm writing about it and talking about it so much. I actually have people who were like pioneers back in like the early 2000s where they were salespeople, they were on the road, they were doing all kinds of different work. And they're like, thank you for giving a voice to the work that we spent 20 years doing. Like it's not new. It's just now that there's supports and there's awareness that it's completely possible to do work like that too. And it's that's what the really exciting part is. Like now there's adoption because we've proven it to big business that it's even possible. And now it's what can we retain? How do we negotiate that going forward? And that's really where it leads into how do we operationalize that change? And that's where the expert in change management is going to have all the answers.
I wish I had all the answers, but I do think you and I both started our careers or part of our careers in operations. And often when people leave either university or they get started in their careers, they look to human resources or marketing or product development or sales even, because those are the quote unquote exciting places to be. But we often forget that operations is where it happens, like where all the stuff comes together and we make it happen. And there's a need for, as much as there's a need for process and whatnot and training and stuff in operations, there's also a huge need for flexibility. And I think one of the big lessons I've learned in my career is that operations prepared me for all of these other opportunities, because it was about getting things done. It was about learning how to do stuff and get stuff done from a work point of view, but also from a process improvement point of view, being able to say, how could we do it better? And I look at my own career in operations, and sure, sometimes it's frustrating, but sometimes it gets to be a lot of fun as well, because you get to improve things and help customers and see technology integrated and see how far we can come. So I do a career in operations, and getting started in operations was huge for me, because I don't think I would have ever considered that a starting point. And then to build on your other point about operations and change management, I think one of the things I've learned from operations is the importance of change management, that you can't, because you're serving a group of customers, you've got employees, you've got all these different stakeholders at play. You've got to really have some process, change management process, change leadership culture in place to help lead people, prepare people for that change.
Communication.
And
Nobody's ever understood communication better than the person who's on the phone with the customer going, oh, really? We sent out that notification. I can totally help you with that process.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, do you mind holding? What the frick are they talking about? I have no concept that we were even offering this.
Well, and part of our, when we talk about change management, when we talk about change management and leadership, one of the things, and I've often heard of it described as an umbrella, and under that umbrella are things like communication, training, learning, as well as kind of employee engagement, leadership development. All of these things fall under change management. It isn't just one of the things we often do is we default to communications when we are implementing a change, and we know that just relying on communications is not enough. That's not change management, that's communication, but it's an important part of change management, but it's not the only part. And so there are so many ways to get and operationalize change management that, and we've all been there from a customer service point of view. Those of us who've worked in customer service where we've had that moment where like, I don't remember that, or there's so much communication that I haven't had a chance to read it or digest it.
You've got special filters to filter all of the change management communication because you're being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And there's change, but it's ironic that the best way personally to engage your employees in the change that you're trying to make is actually to ask their opinion and get their advice and insight and get them invested in the change that you're trying to implement.
And that's where kind of employee engagement, involvement in the change is so important. Different companies call it different things. It could be a change champion network, a change advocate network. But to your point, when you're designing change or implementing changes, bringing employees in early in the planning to get their opinions around what does this change mean for you? What do you think is going to be how do you think you're going to need, or what are you going to need from a support point of view? What are the risks? So sometimes, we forget about the risk inherent in implementing a change, and your employees point out those risks. And it's such an important element of change management is getting that employee perspective and getting that early adopter too, getting them on board as early adopters so that they can support the change amongst their peers.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, if you're getting them in early enough and taking their opinions, you're going to avoid hopefully a lot of that resistance that sort of builds up. Do you actually perceive that when it comes to hybrid remote work, a lot of times the resistance right now to the change is actually at the executive level rather than the employee level?
In some cases, I think there are leaders out there who are Definitely supportive of the change and recognize that it's actually becoming a bit of a recruitment opportunity. I think for some leaders, there is a resistance because for some reason, the leaders, if they started, depending on when they started in the work, all of their career development may have happened in person. All the people they met would have been in person. And there's still an important place for that and an important role for that. But it maybe there are other ways for people to meet each other now and to develop their networks and whatnot. I would say that there is, from a resistance point of view, some senior leaders are going to dig in their heels and want everybody back in the office. But I think some are getting on board. They've probably got good people around them who are helping them to see the benefit and building the business case for that hybrid or virtual working arrangement.
Yeah. And it's interesting because now the opportunity for upskilling isn't necessarily just for lower level employees, it's for the executives and the managers as well, which a lot of times that hasn't been the focus of change.
Yeah. And I don't know if I've seen it in practice done well, but definitely in theory, the idea of reverse mentoring. Traditional mentor programs have had somebody who's more senior mentoring somebody who's more junior within the organization. But the idea that your newer employees, your more junior employees have a lot to teach our senior leaders now and senior employees or more tenured employees. So the idea of a reverse mentor now, somebody who's newer to the company, helping somebody who's been around for a while get on board with new technology or different practices is a neat concept. Again, it's not something I've seen necessarily put into practice, but it's something I've heard in theory that I think would be neat to explore and learn more about.
Oh yeah, definitely. Even just like emoji use.
Yeah.
Emojis mean different things to different people.
I need an emoji mentor myself, probably.
Probably me too, honestly. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about change management that we haven't covered?
I think the only thing I would add is that change management, like a lot of different practices, fields, is also adapting to this hybrid working environment. And I think with new technology comes new opportunities. So I'm excited for change management and change leadership in the coming kind of months, years to see how the practice continues to grow and get integrated and helping to support kind of these moves to hybrid working environments longer term, right? So I think most companies had to lean very heavily on change management in the pinch when we had to go 100% remote. But now how do we adopt this new culture, new way of working longer term? I'm excited to see the role that change management and change leadership will play in that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And you're actually going to be adding in like a coaching aspect to what you're doing as well too, right?
Yeah. Mid-April, I'm starting a executive coaching certificate at Royal Roads University. I did my master's of leadership at Royal Roads back in 2012 to 2014. So 10 years later, I'm starting a 9-month executive coaching certificate. So I'm very excited for that. I'll be wrapping that up in November, December of this year. And I can officially then call myself a coach and be able to add it as a service. I think all of the work that we do, inevitably, there's some level of coaching in it, but I'm excited for my own learning now to be able to learn more formal practices around coaching as well.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's the way leadership is really going, is really adding in that coaching aspect. It's all over. It's going to be a less do as I say than let me help you. And I think that's really encouraging.
Yeah,
and that's why you've always been a role model.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about coaching and the idea of coaching and the practice of coaching is it's the moving away from giving advice to asking the questions so that people can come up with the right solutions themselves. Because we've all, in most cases, have the answers within us. So it's asking the right questions and coaching people with the right questions so that they can come up with good questions, good answers and responses themselves. I'm excited to be on this new journey now as we're getting started. So.
Yeah, I agree with you about the question. I've highlighted it in my newsletter, actually. There's a book I just read, which is by Zoe Chance called Influence is Your Superpower. Okay. And she calls it the magic question. And the question is, what would it take?
Okay.
So what would it take for you to be able to do whatever it is you want to achieve?
And there's so many powerful coaching questions out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's exciting. It's a cool pivot for me. I wouldn't say it's a pivot. It's probably more of enhancing what's already there. I think for me personally, it adds nicely. My business right now is focused on consulting and facilitation. So it is a kind of a neat, it's a third pillar of the business of coaching will add to that change management offering. So it's great. I'm excited.
Yeah, exactly. I can see how it all worked together.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. And we hope that Newfoundland, everybody comes home, and we're going to support that and just wish you all the best.
No,
Thank you
you're
for
welcome.
joining us.
Yeah, and thank you for this opportunity for sure. This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.